I was sitting in a bistro last night, and right next to me was what was clearly a first date.
Oh, boy.
And the guy was performing this fascinating, almost theatrical routine. He had this really rigid posture, chest puffed out, and he refused to break eye contact.
Right.
It was like he was staring down a predator, not a graphic designer named Sarah.
Okay.
So waiter comes over, and the woman, she starts to ask about the specials, but he actually holds up a hand to silence her.
No!
Yeah. And with this weird, smug confidence, he orders for both of them. He says, she'll have the steak. Rare.
Oh.
He looked so pleased with himself, glancing around the room like he was expecting a round of applause for being so decisive.
The alpha.
Totally. You could practically see the invisible checklist in his head, the kind you get from those alpha male boot camps. He was projecting what he thought was high-value dominance. He was convinced, absolutely certain, that treating his date like a subordinate was triggering some primal desire in her brain.
He thought this was the winning move.
The winning move.
Yeah.
But then the reality of the situation just crashed in. The woman didn't swoon. She didn't look submissive. She looked bored.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't argue. She just calmly pulled out her wallet, put a 20 on the table for her drink, and walked out. Didn't say a single word.
Good for her.
And the transformation in the guy was instant. The alpha mask just completely dissolved, sort of slumped into his chair, looking less like a king and more like a confused toddler who'd lost his mom in a grocery store.
Yeah.
He muttered something about her being ungrateful and not knowing what she wants. And that moment of just total disconnect, it really struck me. He was so busy following a script written by other men, guys who treat dating like a wrestling match, that he completely missed the actual human being sitting right in front of him. It just made me realize how much of this so-called dating advice isn't about connecting with women at all. It's all about performing for other men.
That story is. It's so much more than just a simple bad date. It's the perfect illustration of this profound chasm, the one between that scripted male dominance and the messy, collaborative reality of actual human relationships. That man was executing a digital script in an analog world.
And the result was just failure.
Total failure.
So our mission today is to figure out the architectural blueprint of that script. We're launching a deep dive into a worldview that defines relationships, exclusively, as a zero-sum power struggle. We're going to unpack the ideologies that justify this whole performance, trace their evolution in these online communities that are known collectively as the Manosphere.
Right, and we need to analyze their foundational beliefs using hard psychological data.
And then ultimately contrast that performative ideal with the actual science of human bonding.
We're really exploring how these digital spaces have taken this grievance-based ideology and turned it into a powerful, self-perpetuating force.
A force that's appealing to men across personality types, right?
Exactly, by offering them a simplified hierarchical explanation for all their frustrations.
So let's start at the very beginning, the actual science of human connection. Because when you look at how we evolved, the need for collaboration seems to just vastly outweigh the need for competitive dominance, at least in pair bonding.
It does.
What does the research tell us about the core function of romantic love in Homo sapiens?
Well, the research really points to romantic love as a fundamentally evolved psychological mechanism.
Okay.
And it's a highly sophisticated one, designed specifically for cooperation. In evolutionary circles, they often refer to it as a commitment device.
A commitment device. That sounds so clinical, almost mechanical.
Yeah.
How is love a mechanism for commitment and not just, a feeling?
It's highly effective because its main job is to motivate long-term pair bonding. And for early humans, this was absolutely critical to our survival.
It was the linchpin.
It was the linchpin of our entire life history. Think about human children. They're born completely helpless and they stay dependent for years and years.
Requiring just a massive investment.
A massive investment of resources, protection, everything. One caregiver simply couldn't manage that kind of prolonged investment while also gathering food and protecting themselves. It's just not feasible.
So love isn't some luxury item. It's the biological glue that locks two or more people together long enough to make sure the kids survive.
Exactly. That emotional and neurochemical rush that we call love is basically the reward system for forming and maintaining that collaborative unit.
And we see evidence for this everywhere.
Everywhere. Romantic love is a near universal phenomenon across cultures. It also actively suppresses the psychological mechanisms related to searching for other mates once you're in a bond.
So it's like a kind of neurochemical blind spot to temptation.
That's a great way to put it. And on top of that, it has specific, measurable hormonal signatures.
When you say hormonal signatures, are we just talking about the usual rush of dopamine? Or is this something deeper, something more related to actual bonding?
Oh, much deeper. We're talking about the mechanisms of attachment. These are driven primarily by hormones like oxytocin and vasopressin.
Oxytocin, that's the cuddle hormone.
Right. It plays a huge role in mother-infant bonding, but it's also crucial for adult attachment. It regulates trust, it reduces fear responses within a pair. And then there's vasopressin, which particularly in males is linked to, well, mate guarding and monogamy.
So these chemicals, they don't drive dominance, they drive affiliation.
Affiliation, trust, protective shared behavior.
Right.
Long-term pair bonding literally contributes to better health and survival rates for both parents. It reinforces its cooperative function over and over.
Okay, so let's contrast that foundation of, neurochemical collaboration with the Manosphere's core belief that every human interaction, especially a romantic one, is a zero-sum power struggle where the man has to exert dominance. How on earth do they justify ignoring millennia of evolutionary pressure toward cooperation?
Well, they justify it through a really selective adoption and, frankly, a gross misinterpretation of evolutionary psychology. They use these crude animal analogies, and they completely ignore the complexity of human culture and our massive prefrontal cortex.
So they dumb it down.
They simplify incredibly complicated theories like parental investment theory down to a single, rigid, easily digestible rule. And that rule just so happens to excuse the man's behavior and attributes any failure to the woman's supposed biological programming.
And this is where their big pseudoscientific concept comes in, right? The hypergamy myth.
Yes, the hypergamy myth it's the notion that's heavily pushed by these groups that women have a core overriding biological desire to only seek out and mate with the single most evolutionarily fit man possible.
And fit in this context doesn't mean kind or collaborative.
No. Evolutionarily fit is very specifically defined by high status, physical dominance, and financial success. The whole alpha ideal.
So their logic just removes agency entirely from half the species.
Completely. Human females are depicted as biologically reactionary. They don't have the capacity for nuanced preference or cultural choice. They're just
biological robots.
Exactly. They're reduced to biological machines defined by these fixed, non-negotiable scripts. And this allows the manosphere to just discard all the complex social and cultural practices of human courtship.
And replace it with what?
Basic transactional drives. A man's value is his status, and a woman's value is her fertility. Period.
And this reduction of a woman's value just to her reproductive capacity, that leads directly to one of their most, I think, punitive concepts. Can you tell us about the wall?
The wall is a very parental narrative. It's designed to exert control and manufacture a sense of urgency for men. The belief is that a woman's sexual value is a finite resource that peaks in her early 20s and then just dramatically plummets around age 30.
It's a hard deadline.
It's a hard, inescapable deadline in their minds. It's a metaphor, but they treat it as biological fact.
So it's basically a ticking clock on half the human population.
It is. And for men within this ideology, the wall serves two purposes. First, it encourages them to view women under 30 as these scarce, high-value assets they have to quickly dominate.
Okay. And the second purpose?
It serves as a punitive tool against women over 30. They argue that these women are now undesirable to high-status men, the Chads.
And so these women are supposedly forced to settle for the subordinate men, the beta males.
Right. While secretly still harboring this desire for their high-status ideal, it's a no-win scenario they've constructed.
The psychological impact of that narrative must be profound. It's just the mechanism of demotion.
It creates a state of perpetual nihilism. For the guy who believes this, if a woman rejects him, it's not because they're incompatible. No, it's because she is irrationally holding out for a Chad who doesn't want her. Or
she's already hit the wall and she's an undesirable commodity.
Precisely. This framework insulates the male ego from any genuine introspection, while at the same time fostering this deep resentment and hostility toward women who dare to age or express independent preferences. It turns the normal process of finding a partner into a cynical, transactional race against a biological clock that they invented.
So let's turn to the genesis of this whole competitive script. Because it's not just some fringe online chatter, right? This is an ideology that's systematically evolved.
Right.
When did this modern form of male supremacy really start to coalesce?
We can trace the origin back to the cultural and social upheaval after second-wave feminism in the 1960s and 70s. This created a genuine, or at least a perceived, crisis of masculinity.
And as traditional gender roles were challenged, men's liberation movements started to emerge. But they split pretty quickly.
Almost immediately. You had the pro-feminist branch, which recognized that, hey, traditional gender roles actually harm men too by limiting emotional expression and career choices.
And then you had the other side, the anti-feminist side.
That anti-feminist side crystallized into the men's rights activists, or MRAs, and their initial focus was really on legal and institutional issues, things like marriage, divorce, custody battles.
And they were pushing the claim that male privilege was a myth and that men were the true victims.
Exactly. They focused on systemic grievances, but then the ideology pivoted pretty dramatically.
It moved from the courtroom to the bedroom.
That's a perfect way to put it. The focus shifted from legal reform to this: instrumental transactional seduction. This strategic pivot created the pickup artist community, the PUAs.
The PUAs.
Right. And they sought to reverse engineer attraction into a systematic, repeatable, almost mechanistic process. They provided the how-to manual for dominance that the MRAs had only provided the justification for.
So that synthesis, the MRA grievance plus the PUA strategy, that's what created the modern digital environment we call the Manosphere.
It is.
So let's map this ecosystem out, starting with the philosophical core that unites all these groups, the red pill.
The red pill, or TRP, is the philosophical awakening moment. It borrows its metaphor from the Matrix, of course.
Take the blue pill, stay naive.
Stay naive and subservient to what they call feminist societal narratives. Or you take the red pill and you wake up to the sad truth of reality, that relationships are fundamentally competitive, oppositional, and zero-sum. So being red-pilled means adopting this hyper-vigilant mindset, constantly looking for proof of female deception and male hierarchy in every single interaction.
And this philosophical lens then filters down into these more specialized communities, like the incels.
Right. Incels, or involuntary celibates, they occupy the most fatalistic corner of this universe. They operate under a philosophy they call the black pill.
The black pill.
It's a profoundly pessimistic, self-loathing ideology. It asserts that their failure in dating is fixed. It's immutable. It's caused by bad genetics, their low physical attractiveness, and an unfair, female-centric society that funnels all women toward a tiny fraction of high-status men, the Chads.
So even though they see themselves as victims, the beta masculinity, they still fully subscribe to the male supremacist worldview, that women are shallow, biologically driven, and ultimately responsible for their pain.
Their victimhood is the very thing they use to justify profound denigration and hostility toward women. They internalize this belief that if society were fair, if women weren't so biologically shallow, they would be entitled to sex.
And then you have MGTOW.
Men going their own way.
The ones who've opted out.
Ostensibly, MGTOW are men who claim to swear off women entirely. They view any romantic or sexual entanglement as just too high risk and high cost in modern society.
But they're still part of this world.
Oh, absolutely. While they disengage from the competition, they remain deeply entrenched in that core red pill ideology of female deception and male grievance. They just choose separation as their defense mechanism.
Okay, this is crucial now. Let's define the ideological terms that govern all these groups, because I think they get confused a lot. We need to distinguish between the structure, the ideology, and the enforcement.
Let's set up a clear framework. We can start with patriarchy. That's the macro-level social organization where men hold power, authority, control of institutions, and women are largely excluded. That's the system itself.
Right. And the ideas that prop that system up, that's sexism.
Precisely. Sexism is the legislative pillar. It's the ideas, the assumptions, the stereotypes that normalize and rationalize patriarchal arrangements.
For example, the idea that women are naturally more nurturing, so they should be at home.
Exactly. Or that men are naturally more rational, so they should run the economy. It's the justification.
Okay, so if patriarchy is the structure and sexism is the rationale, where does misogyny fit into all this?
Misogyny is the enforcement mechanism. It's the hostile policing of women who violate those established patriarchal norms. And this is key, contrary to popular belief. Misogyny isn't just a simple hatred of all women.
It's targeted.
It's targeted hostility, specifically at uppity women, those who are seen as ambitious, independent, or who challenge the established gender order. It maintains the system through punitive action.
So going back to the guy in the bistro, when the woman just paid for her drink and left, he muttered about her being ungrateful. That reaction, that immediate hostility because she was insubordinate. That's a perfect manifestation of misogyny.
It is. She violated his expectation of deference, and his immediate emotional response was punitive. Which brings us to toxic masculinity. This is the internalized dimension, where the pressure of the system is redirected at men themselves.
This is the internal governor that made him act so rigid and performative in the first place.
Exactly. Toxic masculinity forces men into this restrictive emotional mold. It demands characteristics like fierce competitiveness, suppressing vulnerability, the inability to express any emotion other than anger.
And the constant public reenactment of dominance.
Right. This is where we see Brandon's 4 classic principles: no sissy stuff, be the big wheel, meaning high status, sturdy oak, unemotional, independent, and give him hell. Always ready to use violence.
The guy in the bistro is all sturdy oak and big wheel, trying to command the situation without showing an ounce of genuine vulnerability.
And when you combine contemporary sexism and toxic masculinity, you arrive at the overall worldview: male supremacy.
Right.
And male supremacy is the resulting unified ideology. It positions all women as fundamentally inferior to men, justifying this through flawed biological arguments, and it asserts that men are dominant, superior, and entitled to women's labor, whether that's domestic, emotional, or sexual. It is a hierarchical worldview built on grievance.
And researchers have actually codified this ideology into measurable constructs using something called the male supremacy scale.
They have.
So let's look at the 3 factors of that scale, because they're really the litmus test for whether someone's bought into this ideology.
Right. The scale was derived from extensive online ethnographic research, and it crystallized this worldview into 3 interdependent measurable factors.
Okay, so the first factor is anti-feminism, or AF.
Anti-feminism captures the belief that feminism isn't about equality. It's a conspiratorial plot to control, hate, and emasculate men. This factor directly upholds the concept of patriarchy by targeting its primary ideological challenge.
And adherents believe that modern society is fundamentally skewed against them.
Yes. Example beliefs would be, feminism is a modern guise to manipulate society, and the core belief that men are the ones who are truly discriminated against in the modern world.
The second factor is the justification for excluding women from power, female dishonesty, or FD.
And this maps right onto the ideology of patriarchal sexism. It measures the belief that women are fundamentally untrustworthy, that they're genetically predisposed to cheating, scheming, and using manipulative tactics to gain resources.
This is the source of that hypervigilance in the red pill worldview.
It is. The argument is that commitment gives women the upper hand, that they're prone to lying about their sexual history. You see this with the body count myths, and that they'll only stay loyal until a higher value man comes along.
It's this constant expectation that women are playing a long con against men.
Precisely. And if you believe your partner is biologically programmed to deceive you, you can never, ever relax into genuine commitment. You have to constantly test her loyalty and exert dominance to keep her in check.
And then the final factor, women like alphas, WLA, that provides the prescriptive instruction for men.
WLA reflects the internalized pressure of toxic masculinity. It dictates that to succeed, men must achieve and continuously demonstrate high status and hypermasculinity.
This connects directly to that competitive Chad ideal.
Right, and the language of social dominance, the concept of mogging, intentionally dominating or asserting superiority over others physically or socially, is central here.
The man ordering the steak for his date.
That was an attempt to fulfill the WOF factor, an attempt to signal dominance and status by controlling the environment.
What's remarkable is how these 3 belief sets, the anti-feminist conspiracy, the female dishonesty, and the prescribed alpha performance, unify the entire manosphere. It doesn't matter if you're an isolated incel or a high-status red pillar.
They all share that same fundamental architecture, and the ideology is so potent because it acts as a very toxic but adaptive response to profound emotional vulnerability.
Which is then refined and amplified by digital platforms.
Massively.
So let's look at the men being drawn into this. What is the fundamental vulnerability that this ideology is exploiting?
It appeals overwhelmingly to men who are experiencing real or, perceived social rejection and deep, deep isolation.
Right.
The data on incels, for instance, is just staggering. An informal survey revealed that over half, 50.8%, reported having no friends at all.
Wow, no friends.
None. And when men feel that profound level of social exclusion, the resulting emotional void often manifests as aggression and hostility, and not just toward the source of the rejection, but toward society in general.
And the manosphere just steps right in to fill that void.
It acts as a powerful adaptive response. It offers acceptance, a sense of community, and most importantly, a simple, non-shaming explanation for their misery.
The explanation being, it's not you.
It's not you. It's a vast external enemy, women and feminism, that is to blame. This external attribution of blame protects the wounded ego while providing a sense of camaraderie with others who share the same so-called truth.
And the digital environment then takes this anger and just weaponizes it. How do online platforms actually structure this radicalization process?
Well, online spaces create what social psychologists call strong situations, meaning the platform's design itself incentivizes specific and often extreme behavior and speech. Think about the mechanism of a forum or a site like Reddit, the upvote and downvote system.
It's a constant, immediate feedback loop.
It is, and that feedback loop creates the echo chamber.
Right.
Content that confirms the group's worldview is instantly sanctified and valorized through high upvote counts. Meanwhile, any dissenting opinions are aggressively downvoted and suppressed. This process continuously refines the ideology, filtering out any nuance, any moderation.
And so the resulting content is maximally persuasive.
And maximally toxic, because the community rewards extremity.
It's a mechanism for amplifying what you might call virulent thought germs.
That's a good analogy. Anger, resentment, conspiratorial thinking. These are highly contagious emotions online. They spread so easily, and they serve as key drivers for political and ideological coalescence.
Yeah, the community demands this constant performance of misogyny.
Yes, the WLA and FD factors. So users are constantly encouraged to adopt and escalate this constructed persona of the typical male supremacist user, and it often ends up overriding the real offline identity through sheer repetition.
Let's delve deeper into the psychological profile revealed by the male supremacy scale data. We see that a high endorsement of male supremacy aligns with 4 specific psychological constructs. The first 2 are all about hierarchy and order.
They are. The first is social dominance orientation, or SDO. This is a pervasive preference for hierarchical intergroup relations.
Okay.
SDO measures the desire for one's in-group, in this case, men to dominate and be superior to outgroups, specifically women and feminists. For someone who scores high in SDO, power is fundamentally a zero-sum game. Any gain by women is perceived as a direct loss of status for men.
This helps explain the bistro scenario. The man wasn't just trying to connect, he was trying to dominate or mog his date and the waiter to establish himself at the top of a momentary hierarchy.
Precisely. His behavior was a constant status check. It had to be, because he views all interactions through that SDO lens of required dominance. The second construct is right-wing authoritarianism, RWA.
Okay.
RWA is a threat-driven goal of maintaining and establishing a rigid, traditional group or societal order. Male supremacists who score high here are profoundly distressed by the erosion of traditional gender roles by feminism. They see it as the collapse of necessary social structure.
So they want deference to a pre-established authority and order, and feminism represents the chaotic disruption of that.
Exactly. RWA provides the emotional fuel, the fear and distress that drives the desire to restore the natural male hierarchy. And this fear leads us straight to the third construct, conspiratorial thinking.
The red pill is built entirely on the idea of a conspiracy.
It is. A supremacist ideology fundamentally needs defined enemies and grand theories of malevolence to function. The red pill posits that feminism is a coordinated plot, and that society, the media, education, government is intentionally deceiving men about women's true nature.
And the psychological data shows that male supremacy is strongly linked to, irrational suspicion.
That's right, the belief that powerful entities are controlling matters behind the scenes and actively concealing the truth.
So this isn't just healthy skepticism of mainstream narratives.
No, it's not. They actively replace any trust in established scientific authorities with blind trust in the narrative provided by the Manosphere and its figureheads.
Which provides a simple, comfortable explanation for their alienation.
A very simple one. It's not my fault. I'm the victim of a sophisticated plot. And this conspiratorial foundation is why male supremacy connects ideologically to broader extremist movements. They borrow from the same reservoir of logic-misused genetics, a perceived threat to the in-group, the belief in secretive cabals to justify hierarchy, whether it's based on gender or race.
The conspiracy frame shifts the responsibility.
Completely. It shifts the responsibility for personal failure onto an omnipotent, scheming outgroup.
And finally, the fourth core correlation, which explains that specific, entitled arrogance we saw in the Vistro. Psychological entitlement.
Psychological entitlement is defined as a stable, pervasive sense that one deserves more than others, often unearned privileges.
Right.
The patriarchal system historically promised men certain benefits, including easy access to female attention or intimacy, as long as they adhered to the toxic masculine script. When those promised privileges are withheld due to changing social dynamics, the entitled man feels profoundly wronged and cheated.
And this is where we see the most aggressive manifestations of that entitlement online, like the infamous concept of sexual Marxism.
Sexual Marxism is the offensive, logical conclusion of this entitlement within the incel community. It stems from the belief that feminism has unfairly altered romantic dynamics and that attractive men are monopolizing sexual access.
So what do they propose?
They argue for a government-mandated redistribution of sexual partners to ensure all men receive the intimacy they believe they are owed.
It's a profound void of intimacy expressed through the crudest possible language of demand.
And entitlement. These men desire connection, but the only framework they possess is the language of control and transaction.
So this highly distorted psychological profile is then cemented through the very process of digital engagement, which you describe as cognitive behavioral harm, CBH. This is crucial. How does the Manosphere function as a kind of reverse therapy session?
It's a systematic process of self-indoctrination into a toxic worldview, where genuine cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, aims to identify and challenge negative perceptions and cognitive distortions. The Manosphere actively teaches its users to adopt and reinforce those very same distortions.
Can you give us a concrete example of this reverse CBT? So a young man experiences a normal dating rejection. How does the ideology force him to use these harmful cognitive shortcuts?
Okay, let's use the example of catastrophizing, which is a key distortion. A healthy CBP response to rejection might be, okay, this relationship didn't work out because we weren't compatible, I'll try again.
Right.
The Manosphere reframes this using CBH. It forces the user to internalize that rejection as catastrophic proof of the entire ideology. The thinking becomes, this rejection proves I am unlovable, that all women are shallow, hypergamous schemers, and therefore I am doomed to be alone forever.
Which just validates the black pill.
It validates the black pill, and they're also encouraging things like mind reading and all or nothing thinking.
Absolutely. So with mind reading, instead of just asking or accepting a reason for the rejection, they're taught to assume the woman's motivations are nefarious.
Exactly. She only left because she secretly thought I wasn't rich enough or dominant enough. She was testing me.
And with all or nothing thinking, it's you're either a desirable, successful Chad or you're a pathetic, disposable beta.
There is no middle ground. No room for incremental self-improvement or personal growth outside of that prescribed alpha performance. It creates a reliance on these rigid, toxic shoulds about manhood and what they expect from women.
So by internalizing these distortions, the user is effectively reprogramming his own mind. He protects his wounded ego by outsourcing the blame to feminism.
And in doing so, he ensures he interprets all future social situations through a lens of suspicion and hostility.
Which leads to more rejection.
Fostering deep-seated rage and ultimately even greater isolation. It provides a self-structure on the cheap.
Self-structure on the cheap.
It offers a quick, simple, authoritative, and fixed worldview that trades all the complexity, the vulnerability, and the genuine satisfaction of real human connection for the simple but psychologically poisonous comfort of shared hatred and resentment.
The moment that man in the bistro collapsed after the woman left, that was the cognitive dissonance finally breaking through that toxic armor. It revealed the scared, confused individual underneath the rigid, mandated performance. So what we've established today is that the rigid, self-defeating alpha male script, the one we saw ordering a rare steak for a woman he didn't know, is not an authentic expression of masculinity.
Not at all.
It is the real-world manifestation of a meticulously refined digital ideology, an ideology fueled by profound social exclusion, accelerated by the validation loops of digital platforms.
And maintained by a constant, entitled search for authority and belonging in a strictly hierarchical worldview.
The red pill that these men have ingested is It's profoundly poisonous. While it offers a seductive, simple explanation for their alienation, it's ultimately a roadmap to psychological self-destruction.
It really is. The process of cognitive behavioral harm ensures they become incapable of performing the very emotional intimacy they crave. It just traps them in a cycle of aggression and even more isolation.
The ultimate failure of male supremacy and the toxic script it imposes is not its inability to attract or maintain relationships with women. Its true failure is the deliberate, necessary severance of the capacity for emotional intimacy, reducing the primal human need for connection into a zero-sum competition for status and control, leaving its adherents alone and embittered in the very crowds they sought to dominate.